behind the song, and this time it's for Amazing Grace. Um, as Americans, we kind of tend to think of this maybe as our song that was written by an American or American composer, so on and so forth. And while we did make it really, really popular, it's kind of not. The song first appeared back New Year's Day, 773, and was written by John Newton. And it was in conjunction with the service, a church service that day, used to illustrate his service. It was first published in print 6 years later in 1779 as part of the Illinois Hymns. And hymnals of that era, and you got to think too, 1773 we were still a colony. 1779 was the end of the Revolutionary War. But hymnals of that day generally didn't contain music. They were simply like books of poetic, inspirational works, and that's what Amazing Grace appeared in. And it would take, well, for the next 50 years and long after Newton's death, for it to be coupled with the tune New Britain, of which I recorded also, and that's the most common around the world melody associated with the words. It had been coupled along the way with over 20 other tunes, and New Britain is the one that kind of called and so on and so forth. The song itself, the words and the tune, New Britain, both written by Englishmen, kind of fell into obscurity in Britain, and that's where we kind of come in. We kind of picked it up turn of the 19th century and beyond, and after 1835 when it was finally kind of coupled with recognizable music, and helped really make it a very recognizable song, both in the Christian world and the secular world. Newton, the story of the words themselves, which I think are beautiful. The song itself tells about, it's kind of, the title explains it all, Amazing Grace. But it talks about redemption and forgiveness and salvation, regardless of the people or person's sin, and that is truly amazing. And the words themselves are pretty much a self-testament to Newton's life. Newton was an interesting character. He didn't grow up in a particularly strong religious home. His mother died when he was very young. His father was a merchant and often gone on sea voyages for long periods of time. When he grew older, he became a sailor and was called by a couple of his captains as the most profane man they had ever met. Newton would even invent profanity that didn't exist yet, I guess, kind of as one-upsmanship. And during his lifetime, during that period, he would kind of wax and wane, getting a little closer to religion, and then, turn 180 degrees away and denounce God as a myth, and so on and so forth. And his conversion actually happened one night. The ship he was serving on was about to founder in a terrible storm, and everything they tried, the ship was still taking on water, and then they were in imminent peril. And Newton called out to God for help, and the ship weathered the storm. No more of the crew were lost, and Newton's conversion wasn't this Hollywood tale that was immediate and overnight. He immediately committed the rest of his life to God. It actually took a couple of years, but he always remembered that night. He mentioned it to his friends and so on and so forth throughout the years. A couple of years later, he finally stopped sailing, got a landlubber job, and taught himself Latin, Greek, and started studying theology, and eventually earned a position as the curator at Illinois, England, and teamed with another gentleman, a former attorney, who had a similar conversion story to Newton's, and they began composing hymns in the form of poems. And that's how the Illinois Hymns, which was eventually published in 1779, came to be. The song itself, as I said, fell in obscurity in England, but was picked up in the Americas, both by the African American slaves, and didn't know this part either. Also by the Cherokees during their displacement on their Trail of Tears to help them through their and I can't imagine that either, the heartache from their displacement. But a great song, great story behind the song, and both the writer and how it's kind of, it's basically an anthem in a lot of ways of Christianity. The message, most of the verses are taken straight out of the New Testament. It's a great song, a great story. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoyed the performance. Thanks.